The noise, unfortunately, was coming from underneath the car, this guy. And I have removed the heat shield, which is right here, from what covers up this carrier bearing, and you can see there that you can see through the carrier bearing right there, if you can see right through there. And obviously that's chewed to bits, and the that little piece there on the other side of this hole, so it's supposed to be in the middle of this guy. So it looks like I am going to be getting a new drive shaft. It looks to be on these brackets, each of the bolts on the outside are a 13 millimeter. I'm using a deep well. I don't know that you need to, but if you look in there, it is possible that you might need it on those 2 bolts there and 2 bolts here on each side. Alright, so those 2 brackets are out. Again, 13s on all the nuts here. And then these guys on the exhaust have to come out. These are 15s. That'll be the next step. Alright, after some evaluation, it's 9/16 on the exhaust bolt here. And you'll need to either have a breaker bar, which I don't have on me, or do a buddy wrench like that, which works, but 9/16 is the answer. I thought it was metric 15 at first, but it is in fact exactly 9/16, so that's for that one. Alright, so now that we've gotten those nuts off there, I put a wrench in the middle to separate them so that rust is separated at least there. As we're looking back here to the differential where the drive shaft is at, I've kind of got you flipped over here. The exhaust valves are right here. There is a electrical connector you want to move right away because you don't want to bust that. It is not held in by anything. It is just a normal clip. There's not an extra little like protector on it, so you can just push it to get them off. Obviously you'll have one on each side, and then up inside of here are your hangers for the exhaust. Looks like they are a 13 millimeter. There's one on this side, one on the other side. This black tab here will hold the exhaust up after you remove the bolt. So you can remove the bolt and then just wait. You can lift up on the exhaust after the fact, push it forward, and it should come off of this little black tab. Alright, so on these, they're really weird. This top piece right here, this little tab right there, that's what you gotta squeeze on. So when they're in here, they're a little difficult to get at that little top tab there, but it's not any of the body here. It's up above. It's right up here, right there, just the edge of that. You can push on just the edge, like what I'm doing with my thumb there, and it'll lift the latch right there. Alright, so for the rear hangers, right up in here, there's a 1/2" bolt. You can pull that one out, and then once you pull that out, it'll be loose. And then those 2 hangers in the front are the only thing that's going to hang it up. Alright, so the plan, now that those are loosened, and I've got these hangers, the bolts out of each of them, is to lift up on the exhaust, and then we'll push those hangers right there forward off of this tab. Once they come off the tab, this whole thing should come loose, and I will wiggle it, try and pull it towards the rear of the car, and pull it out the rear so that we can get to the drive shaft easier. I know people have done it with the drive shaft, or they've done the drive shaft with the exhaust in, but I want to not do that because I want to have an easy route to the front. So after you lift it up and push the hanger off, you just push it off towards the front, as you can see here, because it'll hook on there without it. And you can see right here we could hook it back in if we were wanting to do that. But now that that's loose, this whole side is completely loose, and we can wiggle it free, hopefully, from the from the main exhaust up there. I'm guessing once we get the other hanger and get it to bend down, it'll start to come loose in the very front. So adding to the excitement here, the exhaust valve's wire is actually connected right there with a barb that you need to remove, as I have just found out. Otherwise it'll hold the entire exhaust in, so you want to make sure you get that removed. Alright, so now that the exhaust is out and down, right here, WD-40 on there, or it's just not going to come out. It'll come out with some shimmying in this direction as you lower the exhaust down in the rear here. As you lower it down, if you get some movement this direction and then some movement in this direction, it's going to affect the pipes going to the catalytic converters, and you just have to watch which direction gives you the most torque. We had one person pull from the very back, one person move it to side, and then one person watch up here just to see when it started to come loose and what was actually working. So it's going to be difficult to do, but now it is out. The only problem is the jack stands are too close together, so it is stuck here while we work on the drive shaft. But we can get to the whole thing here. I believe this is a 10mm on all 4 of these for this heat shield. And then this is the reason why we're doing this, because that shouldn't happen and I shouldn't be able to do this. Now that we can see it a little better, we can see why. And there's our front. Looks like 6 bolts in the front. These I believe are T50. And then in our rear, there are 8 bolts in the rear. Same situation. According to the manual, it should be around 50 foot-pounds for each of those. So, time to get this one out.
It's just a solid thing all the way
So,
through.
I'm going to remove the T50s in the rear and in the front to start with, because the carrier bracket, at least, which has 13s here, should at least hold the drive shaft in place after I remove these. So I'm going to go through and remove each of these here, and then we'll be back. Alright, so something else I haven't seen, but I've seen in a lot of videos, is to remove these bolts here. Obviously you can't get to the top ones, and you can't turn this because hopefully you left it in park, so it'll be locked here. If you go to the next section here, you'll see next to these 2 lines, this little guy, that's your parking portion. If you push up on it, you see there, once you've pushed up on it, set that down, you can grab the drive shaft and twist it so it can get to the next spot, and when you let go, it locks back into place again. That's what sets your park. Alright, so we've got all the bolts out. The carrier is off. However, she is stuck. Alright, so removing these guys, you just need to smack on this until you get a gap between, looks like on the front side it'll be between these 2 here. There needs to be a gap. On the back side, the same thing happened there. You can see we've got it removed, just smacking sideways on the joint itself, so on the actual metal of the joint right here, smacking it until you get a little bit of a gap there where you can put something in to pry it, and once you've pried it, then it just pops right off. Start to see it separate right here. It's not gapped yet, but it's starting to separate.
Okay. Oh yeah.
That slipped. There it is.
Okay. I could definitely
What
use
a
a hand.
pain.
I don't know what their tolerance is on it.
Alright, side by side, the new and the old. This one, unlike the factory, you can unbolt and service this bearing if it needs it. Alright, next step is with the new one in. attaching the carrier bearing loosely. We're starting with the rear, and we're adding some
other way.
blue thread lock
Yep.
to the bolts just so they don't back out. The thread lock was about 50%, about 75% down the bolt on the stock one, so just mimicking that same thing. Starting all the bolts individually right there with their little washer deals that come with them. Don't tighten anything down until you got them all started. And then torquing these down to 50 foot-pounds, or in our case, since it's an inch-pound wrench, 600 inch-pounds. Alright, heat shield's back in, new one's attached, and it's torqued down. So now it's the reverse process for the exhaust. This guy's already on with his 10mm bolts. Alright, well, 6 hours later, and she's back together. Now the tough part's just gonna be lowering it down. We'll see how it does. So this is the next day. Everything came down off of the jack stands without a problem. Something I would caution you for is just make sure you're not the only one doing this if you can. Have a second person at least to get that exhaust down. And then once that's done, getting the drive shaft in was a lot easier having more than one person. Everything seems to be working okay. I will leave a link down below for the place where I found this drive shaft. It was about half the price of the OEM replacements that I could find at all the auto parts stores. But everything seems to be working, so I will give an update if there is a problem, and if you got any questions, I should respond.